Hello, sports fans. It is Tuesday, January the 28th, the year 2014. And as usual, a lot to get to in the sports world, so let's get it going right now as we are ready for Super Bowl 48 between the Denver Broncos and the Seattle Seahawks from MetLife Stadium in the New York, New Jersey area, not too far from here. And once again, we are joined by Mr. Joe Spano from Sirius Satellite Radio by way of the Sports Bylines. Joe, welcome.
It's great to be back, Mike. And Super Bowl 48, MetLife Stadium. This week is proof that a cold weather site shouldn't host the Super Bowl.
Now, I will stop you right there. Let's stop right there. I actually like the Super Bowl on a cold weather site, and I'm not just saying this because I'm a New Yorker. I'm not going to the game. You are.
Yes.
I wouldn't care if the game was in Chicago, Boston, Alaska, on the moon. It wouldn't matter to me because you know what? To me, it's football. Football is made to be played outside in the conditions no matter what they are. I don't want to see every Super Bowl played in a dome with artificial turf. That's just me. I'm personally sick of all the anti-New York talk. I'm personally sick of all the, outside game. They shouldn't play it. Every game should be played in a dome. Let's play it in Miami every year. And here's another thing, Joe.
Let's play it in New Orleans every year.
But here's
I'm okay with that.
Here's another thing, though. You wouldn't want the Super Bowl in the dome every single year on turf. You say it, but
it wouldn't bother me.
But
you know something? Once you've gotten the best two teams there, I don't want home field and weather and all these other factors to decide it. I understand to get to this point, it's football. You earn home field. You earn all those advantages, and you battle through elements to get there. Once you get it down to those final two, I want it on a neutral site. I want 72 degrees, no wind, pristine conditions. Let them have at it. May the best team win.
But let me stop you right there. If you don't play it in a dome and say you play it in Tampa, Miami, San Francisco, who's hosting in a few years,
I'd be okay even if they did it to make sure it's a neutral site every year. Make L.A. the annual home of the Super Bowl.
The Rose Bowl?
Yeah, I mean, it's falling apart. It's decrepit, but
Joe, you have no guarantee if you play it outside what the weather could be. True. Could be very windy.
Could be.
Could be very rainy. What about the year the Colts won the Super Bowl, Peyton Manning? A rainstorm down there against Chicago.
Could be.
You could have any sort of conditions outside. I mean, yeah, you may not get snow and sleet down in Miami. You could get a big thunderstorm down there.
Could happen.
Get horrible wind. And I'll tell you what, wind impacts the game more than anything. You could have horrible wind. So there's no guarantee if you played in a warm weather climate that you get perfect conditions unless it's in a dome. And I personally don't want to see the Super Bowl in a dome every year on turf. I want to spread it around a little bit.
All right, if you want to spread it around, that's fine. I prefer optimal conditions for the Super Bowl. I also prefer the site to be in one of these places where there are, on one of these sites where there are optimal conditions so that the fan experience is maximized. If you're looking around the various things to do in this Super Bowl week, there's not a lot of buzz. The Radio Row is dead. The various other spots where networks are having their radio and television coverage, they're dead. Everything is dead right now leading up to the Super Bowl because it's 10 degrees out, and nobody in their right mind wants to be outside.
You don't have to be outside in the greatest city in the world to have a good time. Go see a Broadway show. Go see a concert. Go see your New York Knickerbockers.
Well, that's not a good time.
Go see
a good time had by none.
Go see your New York Rangers.
That's okay.
There is plenty to do in New York
City. But I got to go outside to get there, and it's 10 degrees. I'll just hunker down in my hotel. Look at the concert they were having last night. Everybody, there's going to be 5,000 people at this concert. There were 13 people at that concert, including the musicians.
See, here's the problem I have with the Super Bowl in general. It's made for the celebrities, the bigwigs like you, who have tickets to the game.
Big maca like me, huh?
The regular fans are not going to this stuff anyway. They're not going to the Super Bowl. They're not spending $3,000 to go, see a game. So to me, it's for all the celebrities, and they're going by limo everywhere anyway. You're going by limo everywhere.
I mean, the game is true. The game is anticlimactic in many ways once you get there with the events leading up to it. Honestly, my favorite part of Super Bowl week is the parties. You know, unfortunately, I'm working this week, so it's not until Friday night before I get to enjoy the really good parties.
But the parties are indoors anywhere. I mean,
It's cold, but I got to get there, and I got to suffer. I'll have to put on my mid coat.
But I mean, you're complaining about what a half-hour drive maybe. I mean, come on. I mean, to me, I don't mind the Super Bowl being in a cold weather site, and I'll tell you, you're not alone.
Because I mean, to be honest with you, I could have been somewhere this week. I could have been away. I could have been playing golf. I could have been playing tennis. I could have been dropping a line in the water. I could have been at the beach.
Right.
You know, instead I'm here biting my fingernails and wearing gloves.
But and you're not alone. I heard Joe Flacco complaining. Now he's the quarterback. He wants perfect conditions.
I mean, that's a guy that wears a pink jersey.
Right.
You can't really count.
I heard Terry.
They're almost football players.
I heard Terry Bradshaw complaining.
Well, you know why? He's bald. Bald guys.
No, but
it's hard for them to keep warm because all the heat goes out the top of their head. No hair.
Terry Bradshaw must be getting soft in that L.A. studio out there in Fox.
60 some odd years old.
I mean, I can't believe. And Mike Ditka was complaining. That's like sacrilegious.
Well, wait a minute.
Mike Ditka is complaining.
This alone should bring you back. The ultimate tough guy of the tough guys, Iron Mike Ditka, says no cold weather site Super Bowl, and you're still going out on this limb by yourself.
Mike Ditka has lost his focus here.
No,
he's becoming soft in his
you're
old
on the
age.
wrong side with your crazy one-man crusade.
No, and like I said, people...
You're going to argue with... Let's put this list out. Terry Bradshaw. Mike Ditka.
I love Terry Bradshaw.
Joe Spano.
Right, Joe Flacco.
Joe Flacco.
Right.
Mike Lees. You're on a one-man crusade.
You're right, but I have to be honest with you. I don't have a problem with it. Now, obviously, I don't want it in a cold weather site every year. I don't want it in a dome every year. I don't want it in Miami every year. Let's spread it around and let the chips fall where they may. And here's another thing. If you are the best team in football, you should be able to win anywhere you play. Not just in a dome, not just in Miami, not just in cold weather. You should be able to win everywhere if you're the best team in football.
Okay. In today's parity that we have in the NFL, no team is complete enough to be able to win everywhere, and I think you know that.
Now, let me say this. I went ahead and looked at the weather. Now, obviously, things can change. They usually do around here.
Right.
They're saying around 38 degrees start of the game. Will dip after that.
And be in the upper 20s.
What it looks like is
huddle for warmth.
No snow.
I heard no wintry mix. The wintry mix they were talking about earlier in the week is going to be gone by the time the game is.
No snow, no rain, no wintry mix. Not high winds. I heard maybe like 5 to 10 mile an hour.
Yeah, wind won't be a factor.
Now, wind is a little tricky in MetLife Stadium. You
At
never
5
know.
to 10 miles an hour, that won't be much of a factor.
Right. So no snow, no rain, no wintry mix, no bad winds. 38 degrees to start the game. I know Peyton Manning, once it dips under 40, has an 8-11 record. If you want to look at things like that.
It's 19 out of about 9 million games. It's not much of a track record.
To me, it's not going to be as bad as people thought. I don't think it's going to be that much of an issue this week.
I don't think so. I mean, you know, obviously, if you can bring a loved one to the games, you have somebody to huddle with, that can't hurt.
Which you will be doing, of course, and you are not sitting in the press box, you are actually sitting in a seat this year.
We're going to give her the full fan experience.
By the way, where are you sitting? Don't tell me the 50-yard line.
Well, I'm midfield, but I'm on the top level. I'm in the upper deck.
Sometimes you get a better view up there.
I'm more of I'm not a field level guy. Can I tell you? I'm a mezzanine guy.
Right.
Always been a mezzanine. Always been a second level guy. That's where I like to sit because I like that little height on the seat.
Yeah.
It gives you a real good perspective. I don't like being that far up, but to be honest with you, with all kinds of bigwigs and people wanting tickets, to secure 2 tickets under these circumstances was difficult anyway, but it was something I needed to do.
Other than basketball, basketball, the closer you are, the better if you're sitting courtside. Hockey, baseball, and football, if you sit really close, you miss some of the angles of the field.
They benefit from a level. I always call it one level of height.
Right.
If you could sit on the second level in a baseball stadium, a football stadium, or a hockey rink, it will serve you well. And again, with both with hockey and baseball and football, you want to try and be near midfield, center ice, whatever.
No, I've sat really close for some hockey games, like in the first row. you can't see some of the ice. You just can't see it.
No,
sometimes
you do a lot of standing up, and then everybody in the whole section has to stand up, or they get real upset.
Right. So sometimes
you get the guy who says, "I didn't pay to stand up. I paid for a seat. Sit down."
Right. So I like to be a little higher up, like you said, rather than be right in those first.
We're going to be a level higher than I would like, but we're near the front of the section. I'll deal with it. It's an experience. My girl wants to go. I think it's something she's going to enjoy a whole lot. I've been to a bunch of Super Bowls. It's kind of anticlimactic for me. We'll bring a blanket.
And of course, your Giants are not in the game. You'd be much more pumped up if they were.
If the Giants were in the game and she's a huge Giant fan, I'd probably be there now waiting.
Right, exactly.
My Giants aren't in it. I don't have a dog in the fight. I'll go.
So as of right now, I don't think weather is going to be as big an issue as
agreed
we
wholeheartedly.
Thought. Right. Listen, it's not going to be.
We'll have a better idea. We're coming at everybody on Tuesday, January 28th.
Right.
You'll have a much better idea of what weather's going to look like on Thursday.
Absolutely. But as of right now, it doesn't look like a snowstorm, doesn't look like rain, doesn't look like a wintry mix, and wind doesn't appear to be an issue. Will be a little colder than, down in Miami or LA, but I don't think it's going to be a major factor in the game.
You won't be throwing a brick. You won't be kicking a rock. And you won't have wind that'll take anything but a tight spiral and turn it into an end-over-end punt-looking sort of play. So
right.
The elements won't be a huge factor. It'll be harder on the acts that have to deal with halftime, like the Red Hot Chili Peppers and Bruno Mars,
right.
than anything else.
By the way, will you be sticking around for halftime, or is that when you head to the concession stand? Are you a big Chili Pepper fan?
I like the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
You don't like Bruno Mars?
Bruno Mars I can live without.
Right, okay, so you may stay for half. You may stay.
If baby girl wants hot chocolate or beer or something, I'll get her hot chocolate. We'll go get it.
All right, here's another thing. I don't need 2 weeks for the game to get here.
I don't either.
Personally can't stand this 2 weeks off. If I hear another Sherman...
You missed me that much.
No, I mean, if I hear another Sherman quote or another Skittles story with Lynch... or Peyton and Eli and Archie again, some comparison and their share.
Speak ill of Archie. I love Archie.
You know what I'm saying, though.
I know.
2 weeks.
See, you're one of those grumpy guys.
No!
It's 2 weeks. I don't want to wait.
2 weeks, the same
you
questions.
Last week was a complete week off from football.
Well, what do you mean? You
questions.
had the Pro Bowl, which the commissioner said was great football. He said they really tried, and it was spectacular football.
If you want to talk about that for a minute, we will. Now, it's my job to watch this stuff. I don't enjoy watching the Pro Bowl. I'm not going to tell you I watched the whole game, but I forced myself to watch the majority. It was a lot more fun than previous Pro Bowls.
That's not saying much, though.
And the effort was better. I can't say the effort was good because you had about 60% of the people that were trying.
Right.
And the other 40% were stunned by the effort of the 60%.
Right.
The coolest thing was, to be honest with you, Kansas City Chief hitting Kansas City
Chief.
Chief.
I saw that.
Stuff like that.
Right.
Is it enough for me that if this wasn't my job, would I watch it? No, can I be honest with you? If they didn't pay me to get up and watch football, I wouldn't have watched 10 seconds of that game.
Here's my point, Joe. Would you rather have the Pro Bowl in the off week and then the 2 week break to the Super Bowl, or would you rather have the week to the Super Bowl and then have the Pro Bowl after the Super Bowl?
Well, I'd rather not have the Pro Bowl at all.
All right.
But you're not going to lose the Pro Bowl for one reason. It's still a revenue generator for television and a national football.
I'm sure in Hawaii they make some money.
No, they don't make any money in Hawaii. If you watch the game, there are an awful lot of Hawaiians masquerading as empty chairs.
Yes, there were.
But where it's a money maker is, I hate the game. You hate the game. Everybody hates the game.
I hate all All-Star games, so I'm not picking on the NFL.
Right. Well, I am, because I hate their All-Star games. Some others are better than this one. Their All-Star game is by far the worst.
Well, they don't want to hit each other, so you can't really blame them.
Well, it's hard to have an All-Star game in a contact sport where nobody will hit anybody.
Absolutely.
And I understand that. But here's the thing. I hate it, you hate it, all the fans hate it. Somebody watches it. Because when the numbers come in on the ratings, it'll still do a 10. And it'll win its time slot.
It's football.
Which is frightening. Which shows you how strong football is.
Yeah.
And for that reason and that reason alone, as much as Roger Goodell is not a fan of the Pro Bowl, as much as a lot of the players aren't a fan of the Pro Bowl, as much as everybody's not a fan of the Pro Bowl, Because of that, it makes money for the network that carries it. In this case, it was NBC this year.
Right.
It makes money for the network that carries it, and it makes money for the league. So unfortunately, we're all going to be saddled with the Pro Bowl.
Right.
That being said, what I'd like to do, if I'm going to be saddled with the Pro Bowl, because if you put it on after the season, I definitely ain't watching.
So you like this setup? You like the 2 weeks after the Super Bowl?
I get a week off from football.
All right.
On Sunday, put the Pro Bowl at the site of the Super Bowl and kind of make that the thing that kicks off Super Bowl week. Then have Super Bowl week. Then play the game.
But don't you get sick of the same
but the
questions
first
and the
week,
same interviews?
You see, here's the thing. For the first week, there are no questions. There are no interviews. The first week, everybody's hunkered down in their complex studying film, and we ain't talking to them. We get basically a week off from football. We take a refresher. We focus on some other sports stories. Then come this week, now I got to hear the same question 8,000 times.
To me, they could play the Super Bowl right after the championship games
like
a week
the day
later.
after, will make you satisfied.
And I would get rid of the Pro Bowl. If I have to have it, I would have it the week after the Super Bowl.
Well, then you guarantee nobody will watch it. I mean, because you want to talk about you want to talk about nobody trying. Now their season's been over, nobody's going to try.
Here's an idea.
Not have the game, but it ain't going to happen.
How about piggyback the Pro Bowl with the Super Bowl? Have the Pro Bowl, say, I don't know, a couple days before the Super Bowl at the site. Therefore, people are looking for something to do. Maybe they could go watch the Pro Bowl.
Now, Thursday night Pro Bowl.
I mean, yeah, but you'd have to have it at the Super Bowl site. You wouldn't have it in Hawaii. Say you'd have it in New York this year on a Thursday.
Okay.
I mean, and then the people who you are, say have nothing to do in New York could go watch the Pro Bowl before the Super Bowl.
Not terrible.
Not a terrible.
I think the joint would be half empty.
Right.
Because the proof's in the pudding. They have this thing in Hawaii, and it's half empty.
Well, you're right, but Hawaii is. Unless you're from Hawaii and unless you're one of the players, who's flying out there to watch that? If you're going
you figured there'd be enough people in Honolulu that they pack the joint. It's the only professional football game they get all year.
But if you're
take it for what it is.
But if you're going to the Super Bowl, you're in New York already. Wouldn't you be more inclined to? Let's head out to the Pro Bowl.
Exactly. I'm already here,
right.
And I'm a football junkie.
Right.
Come on, we'll head out to the Pro Bowl.
Right. Exactly. Say the Pro Bowl. Is a couple days from now. You'd be more inclined to go to it. I think.
I wouldn't go. But I would be more inclined.
Exactly.
But, if somebody said, I really want to go to the... All right, come on, let's go. But you'd really have to push.
But one thing's for sure.
And you'd have to make it up to me.
You're never flying out to Hawaii to watch it.
I'd rather fly out to Hawaii every other week of the year than Pro Bowl.
Right, exactly. So
I would never go out to Hawaii. The only time I would go out to Hawaii to watch the Pro Bowl is I was paid to cover it.
Right.
I got to be honest with you.
So, to me...
the decaying Aloha Stadium,
right,
which is barely up to minimum NFL level, NFL stadium standards. The fact the place is half empty, the game has no electricity, and it's not a great game to watch.
You're right.
Even this one, it was improved in the fact that more guys tried. There were still a bunch of guys that didn't try and weren't willing to get hit. And then what resulted was a sloppy game with, I think, 8 or 9 turnovers.
No, you're right. And as far as the Super Bowl goes, I don't...
You want 1 week? I can live with the 2. I take the break.
Not only
I make
that,
the best
Joe,
of it.
I don't need all this other junk during the Super Bowl.
Well, that's here.
I don't need the
go on the news
hour
tonight.
halftime show.
Well, that's what's here.
I don't need the commercials. And by the way, the commercials have been rather weak lately. There used to be some really funny commercials. They are not doing a good job on the commercials anymore.
Well, we'll put a commercial on this.
Exactly.
Take $1 million out of our budget and get a commercial on
a
the Super Bowl.
3-hour game becomes like a 4.5-hour game.
Well, that's the worst part.
I don't need all this. This is
when you're at home watching the game and Bruno Mars and the Red Hot Chili Peppers are done, you can go to the refrigerator, get a beer, hang out. We're now sitting there watching them get all this junk off so the game could start again.
Right.
So we're sitting there for another 15 minutes waiting for something to happen.
No, absolutely. I don't need all that. You see, to me, the Super Bowl is geared to the fan who parachutes in once a year.
It is.
And
Don't
to
kid
the
yourself.
Celebrities and the bigwigs and all that.
This is not geared towards guys that watch 17 weeks of regular season football and 3 weeks of playoff football.
And that's why I think a lot of these people have a problem with the outdoor game. They're not real football fans. You tell me a real football fan has a problem with sitting out in the cold besides you.
Oh, there's a lot of them.
No, but have we all gotten soft on the NFL? Now all of a sudden you can't sit outside and watch a football game? You're a Giant fan. The Giants play outside.
weather hasn't been a real factor in a Giant game in 15 years.
You know what I'm saying, though. I mean, come on already. Enough is enough. I don't need the 2 weeks off.
So I need to tell Mike Ditka that Mike G, the sports guy, says you're wrong. I need to tell Joe Flacco this week.
Without a doubt.
I need to tell Terry Bradshaw. So all these guys that are giants of the football world are wrong.
Well,
you're right.
Here's why they're saying it. Flacco's a quarterback, wants perfect conditions. Terry Bradshaw is spending way too much time in L.A. in that Fox studio. And Mike Ditka, I don't know, he's lost his mind, I think. How could Mike Ditka say he doesn't want the game in a cold weather site? Would John Madden ever say that? No way would
I'll tell Ditka you said so, and I'm going to bring him over next year.
You know, John.
He'll chew you up and spit you out. He's still tough.
What would John Madden say?
Bam, bap, whoop, bop,
you know
beep,
John
snow,
Madden.
wind, bop, beep, boo.
John Madden would have no problem with this.
You got eyebrows like that, you can always stay warm.
You know what I'm saying? I couldn't believe Mike Ditka said that. I was so disappointed in that.
I'm in lockstep with them. Let's play it someplace nice. Let's have fun.
Okay, so
you're ruining my football.
We're in disagreement. Let's put all that other junk aside.
Want to get to the game?
Commercials, Bruno Mars, the weather.
I don't have to worry about commercials.
The Skittles. I mean, the endless interviews.
Richard Sherman.
Right. Let's get to the end.
Sherman storming New York. Sounds like a Civil War story.
We have a different quote from him every day. Enough is enough. He's a great player, but enough. I don't need to hear the interview with Aaron Andrews played again. I mean, I get it. I don't need to hear it anymore.
You could never get enough Aaron.
I've soured on her in recent years. I'm a little annoyed by her.
I know you used to like to watch the Peephole video.
Absolutely.
It was a wrong thing they did to her.
Absolutely not. But I'm not a big fan of Erin Andrews anymore either.
She's cute.
I'm not a fan of her anymore. It's just something that irritates me about her.
There's nothing. I mean, I love football, but there's nothing wrong with some pretty. You got to get some pretty in your life. Makes you feel good.
I'm not saying that. I just am a little down on her, and I don't need to see the Sherman Erin Andrews interview anymore. Okay. Let's get to the game. Put all that junk aside.
What game?
The Denver Broncos come in as a 2.5-point favorite against the Seattle Seahawks. This is a very intriguing game. When you break this game down and look at the matchups, it is a very intriguing game. I mean, to me, this is a very close game.
Wide receivers versus corners.
Right.
Offensive line gelling together against a pass rush that can get after you.
Right.
You know, a smallish defense that's now got to stand in there and really, stand up to a physical offense. There's so many tentacles and so many layers in the matchups between these two teams that, man, this isn't going to be an easy one to decide.
No, I've been on the fence all week. Very intriguing Super Bowl. Now, you've had no luck picking against Denver this year. I told you back in the preseason they were going to the Super Bowl. You fought me every step of the way. I said once they got Wes Welker, the AFC was weak.
I told you Cincinnati was going to win, San Diego was going to beat them, New England was going to beat them.
The Chiefs would win the division.
Everybody, I had it all right all along. I don't know what happened.
Right, exactly. So you've had no luck picking against Denver, although I think you could be going against them again, although we'll save that for later.
Save that for later. Why spoil it?
Right, exactly.
Keep them in suspense. Otherwise, they're going to skip to the end.
Here's another fascinating point.
And don't skip to the end.
Seattle has no Super Bowl experience. I mean,
none. But what does that really mean? What does it mean?
Well, Peyton Manning, this is now
There's a lot of bad Super Bowl experience, too.
Peyton Manning, this is his third Super Bowl. I think that counts for something.
That
young Wilson has not been to a Super Bowl.
But they had one of these, I saw one of these inane stats about the last 3 or 4 times that a quarterback with Super Bowl experience met up with a quarterback with no Super Bowl experience. It was the quarterback with no Super Bowl experience.
What were the names, though?
Well, I don't.
Exactly. Most of the time...
Do you have the names? Do you know the stat I'm speaking of?
The big established quarterback usually wins these games. Well, who are you telling me? Are you telling me Hasselbeck against Roethlisberger?
It was Roethlisberger was one that won the first time he won. He beat a quarterback with experience.
Right, Hasselbeck.
It was Rodgers over who did Green Bay beat the first when they won the Super Bowl?
With Rodgers? Well, they beat Pittsburgh.
Right. It was Rodgers over Roethlisberger.
Right.
It was Roethlisberger over Hasselbeck.
Well, there's your answer right there. Hasselbeck may have experience. He wasn't a great quarterback.
Right.
You could even go back to Tom Brady.
But Rodgers over.
Well, Rodgers is
Roethlisberger is.
But they're evenly matched. They're both big quarterbacks. You see what I'm saying, though? The established big time
When
quarterback.
Breeze won, he had no Super Bowl experience.
He's a big time
right.
quarterback.
It was Breeze over Manning,
but he was a big time quarterback.
over the aforementioned Peyton Manning, and then it was Manning over Brady.
Once again, those are all big time quarterbacks.
Okay.
And even
Well, aren't both of these guys big time quarterbacks?
I like Wilson. I think he's going to be there. The question I have is he there right now?
But what I can
I
tell
had
you
the same thing with Kaepernick last year. Was he ready?
Right, what I can tell you about Russell Wilson
I like
is
him.
he'll be as prepared as any quarterback there is for this game. He prepares every bit as diligently as any quarterback, including Peyton Manning. They talk about his film study is legendary.
I love
and
Wilson.
what he does, he's in the complex at 6 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the morning, and he studies a lot of things. And there's some keen things that he does. So I don't know how much experience is going to play a factor in this match.
Remember, the whole
I'm just disagreeable
the
today.
whole Seattle roster.
I'm in a good mood, but I'm in a feisty
The
mood.
whole Seattle roster has no experience at all.
Okay.
And oh, by the way,
How much winning experience is on the Denver Broncos roster?
point,
There's a lot of losing
point
experience.
taken. Oh, by the way, Seattle was lucky to beat San Francisco. Oh, by the way,
Yes,
they
they are.
hung on for dear life, and a lot of that game didn't look good at all. I mean, they hung on for dear life. They didn't get off to a good start in that game, and I'll tell you
They
what.
certainly got the benefit. They got the benefit of all the officiating.
And I'll tell you what. If they don't hit that bomb at 4th and 7, who knows where that game ends up?
Well, you got to give Darrell Bevel and company credit for a great play call.
And San Francisco jumped off sides there and then decided to stop playing. Let Wilson step up with no pressure, and they complete it.
Free play is a free play.
If they don't
Free play.
complete that and the Niners stay up 17-13 there, that could be a completely different game.
It could have, and you know, honestly, there were a lot of bad calls in this game that seemed to all go against the San Francisco
Right.
49ers. Only one of them proved to be critical, and that was the incorrect call on running into the kicker as opposed to roughing
Right,
into the kicker.
right.
Roughing the kicker. That led
Right.
to 7 points because that drive continued, and Seattle drove down and put the ball in the end zone. And when you look back, that was a pivotal play. The other calls kind of worked themselves
No, they
out. You know,
did.
the Carlos Rogers, unsportsmanlike conduct, that didn't have an effect on the game.
Right.
Ironically, the incorrect call on the fumble where Navarro Bowman got hurt, that didn't have an effect on the
They
game.
got to change that rule.
Right,
by the
no,
way. That's
absolutely. There's no
ridiculous.
question. Just go to the college rule. Everything's up for
Yeah,
review.
that was just
Make it
ridiculous.
simple.
You can't have the
You know,
guy
it-
laying
it's-
on the ground with the ball and
Right.
give it to Seattle.
It's really simple. They have these stupid rules. Well, by rule, we can't review.
Oh, it drove me
Why not?
crazy because I'll
Just
tell you-
review everything.
I'll tell you what, Joe. If Seattle would have scored there, would have ruined the game for me. Would
Yeah.
have ruined the game for me.
And you know, if it had gone down that way, where that additional call also had far-reaching effects, yeah, it would have really spoiled it for a lot of
Right.
people. But Seattle was the beneficiary of a lot of calls. One proved pivotal, and you have to wonder if that call doesn't go Seattle's way. How does this game change?
No.
And what is the outcome? Are we talking about a San Francisco-Denver Super Bowl?
No, absolutely. So we're in agreement that the weather should not be a major factor.
We are. We're in the agreement that the week leading up to the Super Bowl is boring. Media day stinks.
No,
And the highlight is looking at the girl from Univision,
Right.
seeing how cute she is, how small her outfit is, and how dumb the question she asks is going to be.
Forget all that. Back to the game. We're in agreement the weather shouldn't be a major factor. We're in disagreement. I think experience means something. You want to say it doesn't mean nothing
I'm not
at all.
saying it means nothing, but I think people overblow this. They have experience in the Super Bowl. It's this Seattle Seahawks team that's been through the playoffs a couple of years now. They've played big games in high-pressure situations. Once they kick this off and start playing football after both teams settle down, I really think the experience in this situation where Denver has the advantage is going to be mitigated.
Okay, I had the same issue with Kaepernick last year with the 49ers. That's why I picked Baltimore. They ended up
Proven to be right.
I always go with the big established quarterback in these games.
Well, now you spoiled the ending of your book.
No,
but that's
I
okay.
haven't said anything yet. I said I usually go. That doesn't mean I'm definitely going.
Don't spoil the ending.
Right. Also, Seattle is such a great home team. They are as far away from home as you could be in this game. They're nowhere
3,500
near,
miles.
They're nowhere near Seattle. See, I think on a neutral field, it favors Denver more than Seattle because Seattle is so good in front of those crazy fans. They feed off those fans. You have now taken that away in this game. I think that's also a little bit of an edge. I think Denver's better.
That one I'll
field.
definitely give you. You know, obviously, Seattle in the 12th man and all the trouble it causes for opposing offenses, which goes a long way in helping that pass rush and helping that secondary. That's not going to be there in this game, and that could play very well into the hands of the Denver Broncos.
Let's dissect it a little more. Let's go to this matchup. This is a fascinating one.
All right.
The Denver receivers against the Seattle secondary. Denver with Welker and Decker, the two Thomases. Your buddy Caldwell, I believe.
Andre Caldwell.
Right, exactly. Versus the secondary of Seattle with
My buddy.
Right.
My buddy.
Exactly. No, you always say I always forget to include him in the
You
next.
do, and I don't know
I
why.
included him now.
Oh, thank you.
First,
He thanks you.
Right. First, the Seattle secondary with Thomas and Chancellor and Sherman. I mean, you talk about a fascinating matchup.
And Lane and Maxwell.
Right, the list goes
Well,
on.
no,
and
the
on.
reason I throw it out there is when you dissect this matchup, is there another secondary in the league? There are secondaries comparable or and maybe even equal to the Seattle secondary for deep. But once you start getting into 5 and 6 guys, there isn't a secondary like this in the National Football League where for every receiver you can bring out there, we're now on our dime corner or our dime defensive back,
Absolutely.
and he's the equal to your 3rd and 4th wide receiver. That's what makes Seattle's secondary so unusual.
So when you look at it, Denver has really good receivers, the good tight end against the Seattle awesome secondary. It is a fascinating matchup to see who wins that battle. To me, it's a flat-out draw looking at it on paper. But let me go to my next point because this is where I think this factors in. The Denver offensive line versus the Seattle pass rush, because that's going to factor in to if Peyton Manning's going to have enough time to find these receivers. Because, let's face it, no matter how good you are in the secondary, you
ain't
can't
covering anybody for 5
you
seconds.
can't. If Peyton Manning has all day to throw, which he did, by the way, against New England, they didn't touch him the whole game.
No.
You are going to get open. So is Seattle going to be able to put enough pressure on Peyton Manning, get him rattled? When he gets rattled in the past, he's not that good. You're going to get him moving around?
There's a formula for beating Peyton Manning. You know what it is.
Denver's offensive line is very good, though.
You know, and it's funny. Coming into the year, it was a clear weakness for Denver, not because of what they had originally constructed, but the injuries that took some of the key starters out of this offensive line. And this patchwork group with some of the remaining starters, along with some second-unit guys, has really had a chance to gel during this regular season, and they went from a clear liability to a strength. They've done a great job, particularly in the back half of this season, protecting Peyton Manning in the passing game, and they do a very nice job of grading some road for this running game of the Denver Broncos that does just enough to keep teams honest.
No, absolutely. So to me, that is one of the major points of this Super Bowl. Will Seattle get enough pressure on Peyton Manning? Now remember,
4 or more sacks is the key number.
Right.
I think if Denver can hold it to 3 or less sacks on Peyton Manning, they can probably win this game. If Seattle can get to Manning 4 or more, and that'll be a combination of coverage sacks and pass rush and everything else that goes with it. But I think if you see Manning taken down 4 or more times, that's probably going to tell you Seattle's going to find a way to win this game.
I think Seattle in the first 2 playoff games combined had 3 total sacks. I don't know if they can get enough pressure on Manning, and that is scary because when he has all day to throw, he just will pick
and
you
as
apart.
good as these receivers are, and as good as this secondary is, if it starts to get to the 5th second and the 6th second, one of these guys is going to find their way open, and Peyton Manning will know where he is, and he'll hit him.
that against New England. New England has a good secondary. I know Talib
got hurt, and that changes that whole
but
secondary.
Still,
and that changes their dynamic.
They didn't touch him.
That's the determining factor in all of it.
He didn't get sacked.
His uniform wasn't dirty.
Not only did he not get sacked, Joe, he wasn't
I don't think he was hit.
He wasn't hurried. He wasn't hit. He wasn't knocked down. I mean, come on. Peyton Manning, I mean, that's perfect for him. I mean, when you get him out of his
He
little
played that game from a rocking chair.
right, and that is right up his alley. When
That's up Eddie. Can I tell you? That's up Eddie
no,
Court.
especially him, though. He doesn't have a lot of mobility. He's getting older now. You get him flustered, you get pressure on him, he becomes a different guy. We've seen it in the past.
Yeah.
In the playoffs, he's melted down a few times.
Absolutely.
So this is a very big key. Can Seattle get pressure on this man? I don't know if they can. I would say, looking at it right now, from what I've seen from Seattle's pass rush the first 2 playoff games, I would say they can't. I think Manning's going to have all day to throw. I think that is a great recipe for Denver to win this game.
Interesting. I mean, I think those are 2 very intriguing matchups that don't have a clear advantage.
Right.
I think when I look at that matchup between the depth of that, the quality depth of that Seattle secondary versus the depth of that Denver receiver core, the thing is, I don't see any clear winners of any of these one-on-one matchups.
That's a wash.
You know, I think that's an absolute wash.
Then it comes
down to that pass rush. Is Manning getting 3 seconds or is he getting 5 seconds?
Right.
And that's the pivotal question. That Denver line has come together very nicely. And, you know, I'll say the magic number is 4. I said it before, I'll say it again. If Seattle can get to him 4 times, they'll win this game. If they get to him 3 or less, they are not winning this football game.
I agree with you. That's a good number to put it on. And if you're putting it at 4, I say they're going to be under that. I don't think Seattle gets to him 4 times. And by the way,
that's a forebearer of what you think may happen.
Right, and
at least in my opinion.
Right, and I'm rooting for Seattle in this game.
I know.
But I don't see Peyton Manning getting sacked 4 times, especially since Seattle, the first 2 playoff games, has 3 sacks combined. I don't see them all of a sudden getting sack happy in this game. I just don't see it. I think Peyton.
They have the pieces in Clemens and
in
Oivin. You know,
right. I think Peyton Manning is not going to get touched in this game. The receivers will eventually get open. I think the weather will be decent enough. I think a lot of advantages. I even count the experience. A lot of advantages being pushed to Denver. Let's go to another one here real quick.
Sure.
The Denver secondary versus the Seattle receivers, throwing Wilson as a runner as well. Another intriguing matchup. I think Seattle has an advantage here because I don't love Denver's secondary. I mean, we all love Rogers Cromartie, who, by the way, said if they win, he could retire. We'll see if that's the case.
That gives me a glimpse into into his thought process. That's not something you like to hear out of a player while he's still active. The reason you don't is how hard are you playing?
Right. We also have Champ Bailey, who's on a pitch count, as you call it. Against, Harvin will be in uniform. I like
That's
Harvin.
huge.
Been waiting for him to do something.
That changes that. Doug Baldwin stepped up big in the conference championship game.
They're very deep at receiver when you add Harvin into the mix. And they're also without Rice. Imagine if they had him. They're deep all over the place, Seattle.
If you add Sidney Rice to the top of that, that's a lethal receiver core. Without Sidney Rice, but with the return of Percy Harvin.
Now, he has to play well. He just can't be out there. He's got to do something and not get hurt again.
That makes this receiver core very intriguing. I like Baldwin as a number 2 and Rice as number 2 type receiver.
The man Tate from
Golden Tate, rather. He's they have some nice pieces. Curse has stepped up that can do a lot of things, and they can win these one-on-one matchups against the limited Champ Bailey. Against it's going to be you're going to see a lot of Quentin Jammer.
Right.
Chris Harris is done.
Right.
Against Quentin Jammer. Against Dominique Rogers Cromartie, who's had a good year, but is no longer a truly elite corner on the level of a Richard Sherman and some of these other guys around the league.
Clear advantage here to Seattle.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the Denver safeties, they're good, they're athletic, they don't cover and they don't change the game the way the Seattle safeties are. Iheanacho and Adams are nice safeties. They're athletic, they're fast. They're not game changers the way Chancellor and Earl Thomas are. So I think clear advantage to the underrated Seattle Seahawks.
I agree 100%.
Wide receiver
but
core.
As I did with Denver, this is a 2-part equation. Denver's front 7 now, can they get pressure on Wilson? Denver sacked Brady when they needed to. There was some key points in that game where they got to Brady. They actually got them. This is without Von Miller. They got to Brady, so it's interesting to see the Denver front 7 if they can get pressure on Wilson. And also, how's the Denver front 7 going to be against Lynch? because that's another key to this game. Will Lynch get going, get the running game going, keep Manning off the field? That's a recipe
Tempo.
for Seattle. Now,
how effective can Peyton Manning be if he's sitting on the sidelines playing assistant coach?
Denver's good against the run.
They are.
They are good against the run.
They are, and their stats this regular season were very good against the run. They did a great job.
I hear a
of
butt
neutralizing.
coming.
You are.
Yes.
You're exactly right. You know me too well. They did a terrific job of neutralizing Vereen and LeGarrette Blount and that New England.
I also thought, not to
run.
cut you off, and I'm doing that a lot today, I apologize.
All right, I'm good. I got all the time to
I
run.
thought New England got away from their running game very quickly in that game as well. They kind of discarded it very quickly.
Well, they started out trying to ram the ball down their throats, down Denver's throats.
Right.
And as soon as it didn't work, they kind of went the other way.
They did.
But a lot of it was that they got down a couple of scores quickly,
Right.
and it didn't look like anything was going to work. But taking you back in the other direction and kind of talking about this Denver run defense, it was good all season long. It was good throughout the playoffs. But they're suffering. Sometimes you wonder when that attrition is going to be a factor. There's no Derek Wolfe anymore. They've lost a lot of guys along that defensive line over the last few weeks.
And Von Miller, of course.
You know, Von Miller out of the pass rush in what was a lost year for him. When I look at pass rush, I see one guy on a consistent basis that can really get after the quarterback, and that's Sean Phillips.
Right.
For them.
And they did get Brady a couple times.
Right.
They
did well, and we talked about Pot Roast, Trevor Knight, and getting in there. He can push the pocket sometimes from the inside. He's a key to their run defense as well. But when I look at the matchups in this one, I'm not inspired that Denver can get after Russell Wilson and be any factor in the passing game and help their secondary, which has a clear disadvantage. And I'm also confident in the bigs of that Seattle Seahawks offensive line pushing around a Denver Broncos defensive line that doesn't rotate a lot of guys in due to the lack of depth as a result of the injury. So I could see Marshawn Lynch and company and that running game really paying some dividends in the second half, much the way it did to some degree against a far better, more stout and deeper San Francisco 49ers defense.
Right.
Because the one thing about the running game, if it doesn't start off well, you got to stay committed to it if you're in a hailing distance. You talked about New England. They quit a little early on it and bailed Denver out. Seattle won't quit on that running game. They will stay committed. And even if you're getting a lot of Marshawn Lynch, 2 yards, 1 yard, 3 yards, no yards, 1 yard, 3, they'll stay committed to it. They'll wear you down because they truly believe in their defense, and they know that their defense can keep them in the game.
Another thing, going back to Peyton Manning when he has the ball, I noticed this with Denver. They have these long drives where Peyton Manning just methodically goes down the field, 4-yard pass here, 6-yard pass here. They get every third down. They take like 8, 9 minutes.
They control tempo too
by passing a lot of time. Now they have Marino.
They're not afraid to shorten the game. They got Marino. Don't forget about Monte Ball.
Right.
That's now become a true two-headed running back attack. And they can do one of those 12-play drives where they throw it 9 times.
Right.
Or they can do a nice 6 and 6, even up. There are times when Peyton starts to see an ability to exploit teams in the running game where all of a sudden he jumps out of shotgun or even out of, he'll jump under center.
No, yeah. And I noticed this with him. You don't see too many gigantic plays from him anymore. It's more of this methodical go down the field. Everyone's playing back. They're afraid to get beat with him.
There's an issue with that. Sometimes it works, and it works real well. But when it's a real controlled passing game and you need 12 plays and most of them are passes to get in the end zone, you know what this is all about. When your opposition is a defense that's this good, the chances are pretty good that you're going to make a mistake before you get in the end zone. So I have a feeling a lot of those drives could bog down and turn into, we got a couple of first downs and we're punting and playing field position, or we're settling for field goals. Because it's one thing when you go against a beat-up New England defense that's not getting after Manning at all and doesn't have Akeem Talib in the backfield, in the secondary any longer. That makes it real easy to put together a 12-play drive with 9 passes. Manning's not going to make any mistakes there. He's not going to have an incompletion. He's not going to turn the ball over. Against Seattle with Sherman and Thomas and Chancellor and Maxwell and Lane. It's like a law firm. With
and
all those
they're even without the guy, the suspended, our buddy who got suspended,
Walter Thurman,
right? Who's done for the year.
I'm high.
Yeah.
But anyway, and more guys to rush the passer because Seattle's not all beat up
Right.
on defense. Now all of a sudden, before you can finish that 12-play drive, there's the incompletion. There's the mistake. There's the false start. There's the holding penalty.
Right.
Next thing you know, you're punting from midfield, playing field position, or you're kicking field goals. So I'm not all that confident that the controlled passing game all the time will necessarily yield dividends the way it did against New England. Because when you do that, you've got to be pretty perfect for a pretty long time.
Yeah.
And there's not much margin for error. Seattle will probably cause one of those errors. It's interesting. Something to think about.
It's definitely a fascinating game when you really look at all the matchups. I mean, I could see anyone going either way on this game. It's that close. I don't think it's going to be a blowout either way. I think it's going to be a close game. I could see it going either way. If you like Seattle, I could see that. If you like Denver, I could see that. It's very, very intriguing to see the way it actually plays out on the field. There's very fascinating matchups in this game.
Very even matchups, and you struggle to find clear and easy advantages for either football team in this case. And every time you think you found one, you think you found something that one can do,
Right.
I can make a case that the other can disrupt it. And that's what makes this game so intriguing. And that's what I think is going to make this a wonderful Super Bowl.
I agree. I think it's going to be a good one. Here's how I would wrap it all up for my pick. And I went back and forth for a while.
You vacillated.
I did. I went back and forth for a while on this game. I was torn. I've been high on the NFC all year. I mean, I rooted against Denver the whole year, but I picked them the whole year, so I did very well. Here's how I would break it down myself. I don't think weather's going to be a major issue. Let's put that aside.
Agreed.
I think the experience is going to mean something. I think Peyton Manning being in this game 3 times and Wilson not being in this game is going to mean something. Usually the big quarterback hoists the trophy. I mean, to me, that's going to mean a little something. To you, it doesn't. To me, I say it's an advantage Peyton Manning.
I think the unique way that Russell Wilson prepares and as conscientious as he is in his film study can mitigate some of that Peyton Manning experience advantage. There was some talk, and I'm going to sidetrack you for a second, and I'm going to let you run. John Clayton, who lives in Seattle, works for ESPN.
Right.
He's somebody I happen to know pretty well from bouncing around. He was talking about Russell Wilson, the way he looks at film. Now, nobody looks at film better than Peyton and Eli Manning.
Right.
They're unmatched in
Right.
how they know what's coming. And this is really about Peyton. He's unmatched in how he knows what's coming and how he can always get his team in the right play and pick apart and exploit any matchup. But with Peyton, he knows everything that's going to happen. He's going to pick the play. It's going to go according to plan, and it's going to work. If something deviates from the plan, well, then he's on his butt and we have issues. With Russell Wilson, it's a little different. John Clayton was explaining he will actually study film, and in addition to doing what Peyton does, and here's the play, here's how it looks, here's how it's, he starts to look at the tendencies of defenses and what they do after the play breaks down.
Right.
All of a sudden, that corner is running around for 6 seconds.
Right.
Okay, this guy typically runs around for about 5 seconds. At second 6, he kind of stops running.
Right.
And this is one of the keys. So while you see these plays and they break down, and a lot of times you think, oh, that was lucky. Look at how fortunate it was. It's his athleticism, it's this, it's that allowed that play to work. It's actually part that, of course, the athleticism and those unique abilities that he has, but it's also preparation for the tendencies of what opposing defenses do when the plays break down. That allows Russell Wilson to know where to look and where to go with the football. To me, that's huge.
I love Russell Wilson, so you're preaching to the choir. I was just saying, can he do it now?
But that's a nugget for everybody out there.
Right.
That when they watch Russell Wilson master these plays that have broken down and have fallen apart, some insight as to why he's able to do it in a way that nobody else can.
Is Russell Wilson ready right now? Usually you have to go through some sort of growing pains before you hoist this trophy.
But, Seattle's going to ask him to do a lot less than Peyton Manning asks Denver to do.
Oh, absolutely.
Obviously, Seattle leans on that defense and their physicality and athleticism on defense. They're going to lean on their physicality pounding the rock. And they're going to ask Russell Wilson to do some things in the passing game and do some special things when the play breaks down and be that unique catalyst and Russell Wilson factor. So they're going to ask Russell Wilson to do a lot less than Peyton Manning's going to be asked to do.
Right.
And I have a feeling he may be able to do some of those things, and that's what's going to make this game so intriguing.
You can't predict turnovers, so I'll say the turnovers is a wash. I'll say special teams is a wash. I went through the weather. I don't think it's going to be a big factor. I will give Peyton Manning an edge with the experience. I think it will count for something. As far as the other matchups, I don't think, and this is one of the key ones for me, I don't think Seattle is going to get pressure on Manning. I don't think they're going to reach your number of 4 sacks.
Okay.
I think Peyton Manning is going to have a clean pocket to throw in. He's not going to be touched all day. And I think those receivers will eventually get open.
That's going to allow them to win those one-on-one matchups because you can't hold out there forever, even if you're Seattle's defense. And that goes a long way in determining what's going to happen in this football game.
I also think the Denver front seven will control Lynch. I don't think he's going to go off for 200 yards. They will keep him in check. I do think Seattle has a major edge as far as their receivers against the Denver secondary. But
and that's going to allow them to make some plays against that Denver defense.
They will make some plays. They will score some points. Denver has a habit of getting a big sack like they did against Tom Brady in key spots. There was like it was a 4th and short New England had, and they got sacked a couple times in that game. Denver will get a key sack here and there. I think this game is a white knuckler. I think it is as close can be. I could have been talked into either team. I think it's a very, very close game. I also think Seattle will settle for field goals more than Denver will in this game. That goes back to the experience with Wilson. Maybe he'll miss a pass here and there where Peyton Manning won't miss a pass. I think it's a razor-thin game. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to middle it, and I don't usually do this. I'm taking Seattle with the 2.5. But I'm picking Denver to win 24-23 in Super Bowl 48 at MetLife Stadium.
All right. Well,
and I know you're going the other way.
As you know, and you've heard me break down this matchup, I like a lot of what Seattle can do, and I think they've been the best team in football throughout this season. I think their physicality and their never say die with that running game, their unwavering commitment to this running game, will pay dividends in the second half. And that keeps pressure off of Russell Wilson, and it means Russell Wilson won't be asked to do a lot. And he'll make a few key plays in this game, big passes, much like the 4th and 7 in the San Francisco game. He'll keep some plays alive. We talked about those factors, and you'll see him take some plays that are breaking down and create some very special things. I also think they'll be able to exploit that advantage they have against the Denver secondary. And I don't think Denver, with Sean Phillips as their only main pass rusher, is going to interrupt Russell Wilson and his rhythm very often. So I think Seattle is going to be able to do some things offensively. And I think they're going to be able to do it and control tempo. And I don't think Denver's going to get a ton of possessions. And I think that their secondary is going to be able to hold up against those receivers for 4 and 5 seconds. And it's going to get them some coverage sacks, as well as some sacks by pure pass rush. And I think they reach that magic number of 4. But I think ultimately this is a game where Seattle, believe it or not, controls tempo. And they win the football game outright by a final score of 21-17.
21-17. So you think the Seattle defense, along with their ball control offense, will hold Peyton Manning and the Broncos to 17 points? That's nothing to sneeze at, what you just said, because Denver has not been shut down often at all this year. They've been how many times have they been under 20 points this year?
Not many.
They're not many. I'm trying to think. Yeah,
there's not many. You'd have to look it up.
Yeah,
I've seen, times. I've seen times where they have been slowed down. I've seen San Diego slow them down a couple of times. The first half of that game against Houston, or the first 3 quarters of the game against the Texans in the regular season, where they really struggled. So you can slow them down if you have some things to bring. I think Seattle brings those things, and I really believe that this is a game that Denver's going to be leading 17-14 with about 2.5 minutes left. Seattle will get the ball. Russell Wilson will play hero. Seattle will not have to settle for the field goal. They'll score the touchdown to end this game in regulation, 21-17.
Wow.
Seattle.
So you are saying Denver doesn't go over 17 points. That's quite a statement right there.
Yeah.
That is definitely quite a statement.
I'm bold. I may be wrong, but I'm bold.
I can't disagree with you picking Seattle. I love this Seattle team. I think it's a very fascinating Super Bowl. I could go either way in the game. I mean, you could talk me into Seattle.
Well, there's the roadblock. Maybe somewhere I'll pick off Denver.
Right, exactly.
Or maybe I could be the thing, and I could be the reason that Peyton Manning's lifting the Lombardi Trophy.
Right, exactly. Because
But I'm with you. I think it's a very close game. And I think some of these matchups that we've talked about, they're going to go a long way in determining who wins. I'm seeing them going one way. If they go the other way, the outcome of this game changes.
Well, right. If I told you right now, Seattle gets no sacks, what would you tell me?
Denver wins the football
Right,
game.
exactly.
I don't know about comfortably, but they win the football
And
game.
that's what I'm saying is probably.
That's
gonna
like
happen.
you saying to me, Marshawn Lynch and Turbin combined for under 100 yards.
Right.
Denver wins the football game.
Right, and that's what I'm banking on. I don't think Lynch is going to go off for 200 yards or have a gigantic. I think they contain him enough. I think Peyton Manning is not going to be touched. I think that's the way the game is going. You're going the opposite
So
way.
then, if Peyton Manning does win, now it's 2 Super Bowls, 2 different teams. That's 2 Super Bowl victories with 2 different teams, 3 appearances in the Super Bowl, losing to a Drew Brees-led New Orleans team.
Right.
Does this cement his legacy as the greatest quarterback to lace up a pair of NFL cleats?
Absolutely not, but I'll tell you what, it goes a long way as far as his legacy on a positive note. I mean,
Well, you know what I'm driving at, right? I mean, when he retires, he'll have just about every career record as far as passing records by a quarterback.
Joe,
the only one he won't have probably is the wins record of Favre. He'll have yardage, he'll have touchdowns, he'll have them all.
let me stop you right there. There's been too many games in the playoffs where Peyton Manning has come up small for me to label him the best ever. He's under 500, I believe,
But
in
here's
the
the rub.
playoffs.
Now you've won 2 Super Bowls.
With 2 different teams.
Does that now, the one stigma on Manning is not a huge postseason winner. But if you got to the Super Bowl 3 times and won it twice, does that now dispel that stigma enough to put him at the top of the list? I would have to say yes, just because when you look at the history of quarterbacks in the National Football League in modern times, and I'll even go back to Montana won 3 championships, Bradshaw won 4, Starback won 2, Brady's won 3. If he's got 2 and made 3 trips there, for me, with all those regular season accomplishments, all those records he's going to have,
You're putting him number 1.
I'll make him number 1 if he wins this game.
Absolutely not. Let me stop you right there. There's been too many times in the playoffs where he's come up small. He's under 500 in the playoffs combined. I think it goes a long way for his legacy. I think he goes up a few notches.
I mean, I think he's in the top 5 now.
Listen,
and
he's
I think
obviously
this makes him number 1.
He's obviously an all-time great right now. He goes up a few more notches from here. I don't know if I have him in the top 5 right now. He's definitely in the top 10. He goes up a few more notches with the win. I will never put him first just because of all those years. His teams fell flat on their face, and he had a lot to do
I asked the question. I posed my opinion.
No, but I'll tell you what. Go the other way, and he loses this game, and he plays badly. I'll be hammering Manning all next week because I'll tell you what, I've seen this act too many times with him. I mean, he's got to play a good Super Bowl here. He has played a lot of bad playoff games. He's gotten tight, even going back to college where he never beat the University of Florida, got intimidated by them. He's had a lot of bad playoff games. He had a chance last year to bail them out after they gave up the Hail Mary to Baltimore. He came up small in the overtime. To me, I will hammer him all next week if he loses this game and plays badly. Now, if he wins, he's an all-time great. He goes up a few more notches. I'm not putting him number 1. And we can argue this all day because there's no exact science to this.
No.
Too many bad performances for me, and he doesn't have the most Super Bowl wins. You know, he's behind Bradshaw, he's behind Brady.
No, absolutely.
So I will never put him 1.
You know, we're going to agree to disagree.
Right.
I just think that the complete body of work and the second Super Bowl victory mitigates a lot of those bad playoff performances. And now he doesn't have the stigma as He only won one.
I agree with you. I'll move him up a few pegs. He's an all-time great.
Okay.
I'm just not putting him up at the very, very top.
Fair enough.
Unless, of course, he sticks around and wins a couple more.
Okay. Well, I don't know how many more there'll be, but he has a very pivotal physical coming up not long after this Super Bowl is completed. That could go a long way towards telling you what the future of Peyton Manning is.
He's coming back next year. I laughed at this. I was looking through one of my old Sports Illustrated. They gave Peyton Manning the Sports Illustrated Sportsman of the Year for the last year. And my first thought was, well, why? They didn't win last year. Why?
No, they went as far as they went with Tim Tebow the previous year.
And then I was thinking, well, if they win the Super Bowl this year, you're going to give it to him again, or you're not going to give it to him. So you gave it to him when he lost, but you're not going to give it to him when he wins, or you're going to give it to him both years. Very bizarre, the Sports Illustrated Sportsman. So I was thinking about that, but very, very interesting game. I think it's a very exciting game. The Super Bowls, I hammered the Super Bowl. There's been a lot of decent games recently. We've had a lot of close games.
A lot of close competitive games. It's not the game we remember in the 80s and 90s where it was blowout city.
Right.
There have been some compelling football games that have gone down to the bitter end. Last year we got help from a blackout that kind of changed momentum, and now, bam, we had a football game.
Right, so I think this should be a very close, razor-thin, tight, really solid football game. I like the game. I like the matchup.
Where are you going to watch it?
I'll be right here.
You're going to hunker down?
I'll be right here. I'm hunkering down.
You're allowed to leave the building.
I have to hunker down. I have to get in my zone. I have to concentrate.
To take notes?
I have my notebook handy, as you can see. See, you store all the stuff in your brain. I actually have to write.
Do you get a kick out of it that there's he's got names, he's got and there's no paper.
You should see me.
And there's nothing written on my hands. Nothing up my sleeve. There's no trick.
You should see me during the week when I do like I do like 5 or 6 shows a week. Right. Sometimes I do 2 on Tuesday. And every night I got my notebook out while I'm watching the games and I'm jotting things down.
Like I'm supposed to do that. Back in the day I did.
But you don't need to because you remember everything.
People laugh. They're like, people in the business say, you don't watch a game with a notebook? I says, I know I'm supposed to because that was how I was taught. And they said, I said, no, I have one of these photographic memories.
Right.
I said, I have every detail in my mind.
Right.
And I can pick out every play and I'll remember every play down and distance and who made it.
I could probably remember a lot of it, but I'm so paranoid I'm going to miss something that I write it down just in case. So I glance back to see if I got everything there. It's just a security.
I'm just, like now when I broke into this business, I used to have a lot of, now you'll watch, there's a computer in front of me and people like, a computer in front and an outline.
That's it. Yeah.
I literally have a show map. So because I can't remember everything. When you have multiple guests, I got to remember time. So I have a show map, a piece of paper with a show map in front of me and a computer, and that's it.
That's it.
Everything else is there. It's in here and on there.
Yeah. So, like I said, should be a really exciting game. You should enjoy it there with your girlfriend. You should have a really good time.
Get ready to blow on my hands.
Wear your gloves and your ski mask and your big furry Notre Dame coat. You'll be fine.
I'm going to wear her.
Exactly.
She's warm.
You just went to an outside game with Notre Dame, although it wasn't that cold.
Warm out.
Exactly. But this should be a very compelling. I would be disappointed if this was a bad Super Bowl. I would be disappointed if this was a blowout Super Bowl.
So would I.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a very compelling Super Bowl. Very interesting to see how it plays out.
Exciting stuff.
I like Denver 24-23. You like Seattle 21-17.
That's it.
There we go. So we are set.
We are done.
We are. So take the people home, tell them where they can find you, and all that good stuff.
You find me on Sirius Satellite Radio and the Sports Byline Broadcast Network, 8 to 10 Eastern Time, Monday through Friday. This week, we're at Radio Row. If you want to find an affiliate for the Sports Byline Broadcast Network, check the website, www.sportsbyline, spelled BYLINE.com. You can check listings for any replays, a local affiliate, or you can click on the Listen Live link and take advantage of that and listen on the computer. WPIX Morning News this Friday, before the Super Bowl, this Monday, after the Super Bowl, 6:45 a.m. Eastern Time, both days. Check your local listings and your cable provider for channel availability. Again, 6:45 Eastern Time, both Friday and Monday. I'll be breaking it down for you.
There you go. Thanks to Joe. Make sure you guys enjoy the Super Bowl. It should be a good one. I will talk to you guys very, very soon. There you go.